Welcome to Business Makers Podcast. It's about equipping entrepreneurs, business leaders, and investors to build, grow, and establish businesses for the glory of God. We are ordinary Christians striving for extraordinary results. Well, I'm excited for the show today. We have the CEO of Armored Republic. Of course, you guys probably also know him as one of our corporate partners, and been involved in a lot of other projects with David. David's just been kind of a little bit of a business mentor to me, and is doing a lot of good work beyond his current company. And so excited to be talking to David today. But before we go any further, our live Twitter Spaces was on Friday. So make sure you check that out too. It'll be on Twitter, Rumble, YouTube also, all that live there, and go check out that recording. A lot of fun time in the Twitter Spaces that we had last Friday. Also, our conference is going to be in Fort Worth this next year, October 31st through November 2nd, and the topic's prodigal America. Excuse me. Where does America need to repent? Prodigal America. Where does America need to repent? Go to prodigalamerica.com to sign up. Very excited about that conference. The topic is just so important. And if you want to support the work we're doing, join the club, or also, if you're thinking about it, become a corporate partner. Glad to just reach out to us through contact@fightlaughfeast.com. Love to connect with you guys. So CEO David Reece, he's also a pastor too. So he's shepherding a church and he's shepherding a business. And so please welcome David Reece onto the show. David.
Brother, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's good to see you. And you mentioned the projects we've worked on together. It's been fun and it's neat. I would encourage everybody to make sure you can find brothers that are reliable and to be able to work with them, because it makes it fun. Also, in case you don't know, Gabe Rench has like a gut of iron. He is a guy with fortitude. And so that's an important fruit of the Spirit. And it's especially important when you're working with people. So just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, David. Now, what caught me, we started the business podcast, as I mentioned, because we really do want to encourage Christians to take more risk, to start businesses, to become entrepreneurs. And we aren't trying to, in any way, shape, or form, discourage Christians in their, in the current situation that God has them in. And we want them to be faithful there and successful there. But we really, I think one of the calls for the moment is to try to be as anti-fragile, try to be as agile as possible without, so you can provide for your family when times are difficult. When big tech comes after you and fires you because you refuse to use personal pronouns, we need to build our own is what needs to happen. But you tweeted out, was it last week or the end of the previous week, that I'm just going to read the whole tweet because I think there's a number of directions I want to go off this tweet. But you said, building a Christian business requires either gaining traction to build from zero or some asset resource to use to get control of an ongoing resource exchange. The profits for obtaining an ongoing business can be exceptional. The profit for a business is far smaller than the cultural power of a business. That's really interesting. The way you can influence lives for the glory of God in a business is dramatic. And then you say, DM me, reach out to David if you are interested in talking about how to invest in buying businesses to turn them into Christian businesses. I want to highlight that, turn them into Christian businesses. Mm-hmm. Because the federal government wickedly and unconstitutionally regulates who I can talk to. Accredited investors only. This means high income or rich people only. We'll get to that last comment. I understand what you're saying there, but it's interesting that I never really thought of. I've always thought about maybe starting my own business, kind of a startup kind of thing. But I'd say probably about 4 years ago, I forgot who introduced it to me, but just the concept of buying a business,
right?
For your and it's actually far more feasible than you would think. For one, and then secondly, to your point here, owning a business is far more, let's say, dramatic or far more, impactful than even the profits that come from the business. Let's start there. I want to start with like, you know, just the practical nature of like, how do you buy a business?
Yeah, so that's important. So first of all, if you're going to buy a business, you're taking a risk, right? And the way you're doing that, you're either doing it by getting your own cash together to buy the business, or you're borrowing other people's money, or you're seeking investors. And so in any case, you're taking a risk there. So what you want to do is you want to have some skills that are developed already. So if you haven't done any work, if you haven't been able to be a useful servant to anybody else, then you need to get that under your belt. If you need to get 3 years of 5 years of
Yeah.
working well and learning how to serve other people well to get a basic idea of stuff. But let's say somebody's done that, they've been working for a bit and they have some skills. What you're looking for is a business that you can translate those skills into. Or
Okay.
you're looking for something, first of all, that you understand. So if you don't understand the business, do not think about buying it. You need to have something that you go, I know how this works. I know how to
Yeah.
do this. I can provide value for people here. So,
Yeah.
the cool thing is skills are transferable, right? So like
Mhm.
if you've figured out how to market in one business, you can probably take those skills and figure out how to market in almost any business.
Yeah.
If you've been able to figure out how to manufacture one thing, you can probably figure out how to manufacture other stuff. So you need to kind of figure out skills. So there's 5 basic skills in business. And we
Okay.
did a longer conversation about this in the past, but the idea that you need to know basically what's the value you're offering to the customer. It's called a value proposition. You need to know how it's marketed, how to sell. And marketing is taking people who don't know who you are and getting their attention. Hey, and then
Right.
you're also trying to turn that attention into interest.
Right.
And then with sales, you're taking interest and turning it into a paying customer.
Right.
Then value delivery, you're providing the thing you've promised. And then the finance, you're making it so you can do it profitably, right? So
Mhm.
once you've got a couple of those skills under your belt, you can figure out the other 2 or 3. And
Yeah.
so you learn some area of how business works and you find a business that you kind of understand how it works. And so
Okay.
from there, I talk about sourcing and the financing, but
Yeah,
that's
that's where I really want to talk about is the financing and the putting a deal together, um uh you know uh details.
yes. So assuming you've got the basic skills of doing at least a couple of those things, like you need to know how to do 2 or 3 of those 5 because you're going to learn the other
Okay.
ones on the fly. And if you don't already have 2 or 3 out of those 5 areas, like down, like you say you're an accountant, you probably understand finance pretty decently. So then you need to learn like marketing or sales. And frankly, if you can only learn one, learn how to do sales because you can make money if you know how to do sales, right? If you
Right.
if you can pick up a phone and dial for dollars, you're going to be
Yeah,
able to figure out how to make money in almost any business. And
that's right.
so I know you have a background in sales, and
Yep.
so that grit that it takes to actually like do that. So once somebody's got the ability to deal with that and to deal with pulling business in, then what you're looking for, the funny thing is that the process whereby you get a deal together is
Uh-huh.
you're actually basically doing a sales job of yourself. The
Right.
first thing you're doing is you're finding people who are interested in selling a business. That can occur by literally just talking to current business owners. There's websites where you can search for that. You're
Right.
networking. Tell people you're looking to buy a business, right? Like
What's a website have you used to find businesses that are for sale?
so, Biz Buy Sale is an example of one. There's other ones. If you're looking for smaller deals, the ones that are broadly available, if you just like Google or DuckDuckGo, or we're going to turn that into a verb, right? DuckDuckGo. If you just Google basically something like buy a business, you're going to find 3 or 4 or 5 websites where you can do that,
Yeah.
and you're going to look at those, and you're going to look for a deal where you think this is something where this is a business I understand, and preferably it's going to be local to where you're living. And then you're going to just talk to those people, and your job is to convince people that you are able to buy the business
Mhm.
and that you can
Mhm.
make it succeed. Because these
Right.
guys built this thing, right? And they're like,
Right.
I don't want this thing to just like flop the day after I sell it to you.
Right.
And also, I don't want to waste time on a deal and you're not able to pay me, right? So,
Right.
so you're trying to show them that you're credible as a buyer. And you're
Yep.
trying to show them also that you're credible as a person who can operate the business. So that's
Mhm.
that's the first stage is the deal.
And so once let's say you find that business, you've convinced the owners that you're a capable person of running and taking the reins of the business. How do you? I'm sure there's probably all sorts of different finance ways of financing a deal, but how have you financed deals? Run me through an example of what you've done.
Absolutely. So there's basically 3 elements of the financing, and
Okay.
there's all these sort of subcategories inside of that. but the three basic categories are going to be this. You have equity money where there's just cash going. It could be you or an investor, right? But it's just money. So you're putting that money in, and it's sort of a down payment. The same way you put like a down payment on a house.
Yep.
So your business partners or you are coming up with money to put as a down payment.
Is that pretty much always the case? You need to have some sort of cash infusion or investment into a business?
So most of the time, yes. However, I think that when the market is bad for a seller, you can see some really interesting deals. It happens in real estate and happens with businesses as well. And
Okay.
so I really encourage people, to get into as a first business, potentially trying to buy a piece of real estate like a rental property, or buying their first house, and then as opposed to selling it to buy your second house, like when you're moving, just keep it and rent it out, and then scrape together a down payment for a second house, because the basics of the financing of a piece of real estate are the same as the type of financing you need to pull together when you're dealing with the purchase of a business. And it kind of teaches you in a more simplified way the basics of finance for a business. But so when you're looking at this, you normally need a down payment, but sometimes you can use the other two things in combination. And that depends on how desperate the seller is.
Yeah.
And those things can be, does the person have a reason they need to leave the business quickly? Is the business, do they not have the cash to support continuing with the business? Because maybe they're operating the business at a loss for them, and you think you have a good reason you could turn it around. And so this idea that the three pieces are: you need equity, you need cash coming in, right? Either you or investors. Secondly, you can borrow money from a bank, right? Or that could be from other people. It could be personal loans, right? And the third one is the seller can essentially, as opposed to taking money now, they can give you some sort of a future financing. And that can take the form of, they don't sell you the whole business all at once. That could be, they give you a seller carry note where basically they're saying, yeah, you're buying this business from me for $1 million and I'm lending you 200,000 of it, and you're going to pay it to me with interest.
Right.
And so you have to pull together $800,000 now.
Right.
Or you can have what's called an earnout, where if the business, they're saying, hey, the business is doing this, we expect it to produce this much money next year. And you go, okay, well, if that's true, I'll pay you extra money, right? So you're saying, like, if they say the business is going to produce $100,000 in profit or $500,000 in profit, you can say, okay, cool. If it does that, then I'll give you, some number of dollars. So the idea of somebody's making claims and you're buying the business on the basis of claims about its past performance and its current condition, and then there's kind of projections, and everybody goes, well, no, you can't guarantee the projections. It's like, that's fine, but if you believe them, maybe you're willing to have some of the money you're getting for this be payments that are contingent upon the performance of the business. And so the more credible you seem to the buyer, the more they're going to be willing to do that.
Right. That's very helpful. I was looking at buying a business myself, and in the business language is, do you buy the business at 1x, 2x, 3x, 4x kind of thing?
Right.
What's the multiplier the business is selling at? So they bring in, let's say, $1 million a year. And they want the business bought for $2 million. That's a is it a 1x or 2x multiplier? Is that a 1x?
So I missed the first number. So it was
1 million.
So it was $1 million, and what was the price?
And then they wanted to sell it for $2 million. Is that 1x?
So that would be a 2x. So if the business makes $1 million a year and they're selling it for $2 million, then it's 2 years of the profit that they're expecting to make. And a lot of the time people will use earnings or profit, but they'll also, in some industries, you'll use what's called EBITDA.
EBITDA. Yep.
And that Warren Buffett famously says that EBITDA is sort of BS earnings, right? That's his line about it. But the thing is, it represents sort of cash flow. It represents the cash that you can control and use to pay down debt or service debt.
Right.
So it's a useful measure when you're doing business acquisitions.
Right.
If, however, you're Warren Buffett and you're sending on tens of billions of dollars of cash and you're just buying businesses in cash, I can understand why he would make the argument that those are disingenuous earnings. But when you're looking at using debt, it's a really useful figure.
Yeah. But one of the ways I thought of buying that business or financing it is how you basically were kind of getting at, was kind of looking at performance. And then as the business gets transitioned over to me, I would pay out based on the performance of that business for the next 2 years. Because if the business doesn't perform well, then and because I've been told a load of crock or
Right.
whatever, right? And I buy the business, and I end up buying a lemon, like a lemon car,
Right.
and then it tanks on me. Well, then, and I still end up paying the owner, X amount of dollars or whatever. So I thought that was kind of interesting way to kind of work it out and just say, okay, well, I'll do 2x if the business in 2 years hits the 2x that you claim that it's going to hit. Well, then I'll pay out based off that 2x. And if it hits 1.5x or whatever, then I'll pay out whatever the 1.5x number ends up being. Does that make sense?
Right. So let's use your example of the $1 million profit business. Okay. So let's say you have that business. So they go, hey, I want $2 million for this thing. And you say, well, pulling together $2 million for this business is a lot of risk because, you're relatively small still and all that. And so you go into that and you say, look, we'll pull together $1 million in cash, and you're going to do that by, your own savings, and you're going to borrow from a bank. And you say, maybe you give me $500,000 in a seller note,
Yeah.
right? Where you're saying, I'm gonna pay this, but maybe I've got a 5-year or 10-year period of time, and I'm paying interest while it's going.
Yeah.
And then the last one would be sort of the earnout, where you say,
Yeah.
and the first year, if it does $1 million, we'll pay you $250,000. And
Right.
the second year, same thing. If it does $1 million or better, we'll pay
Yeah.
you another $250,000. And that's how we
Yeah.
get to that too. And that way, there's sort of this thing, and there's all sorts of things you can do around that. Like people will go, well, what if in the first year we only get 750, but the second year it does 3 million because
Right.
there was just kind of a thing. You can go, okay, well, that's fine. You can catch up. So the second year two, if you manage to do 1 million, you get that year. But year two also, if you beat 1.5, maybe you can even catch up if you miss the first year,
Yeah.
whatever. So that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You can do things where you're trying to help them to feel at ease. Your goal
Yeah.
as a buyer is to be able to obviously put as little money in as possible
Mhm.
to get the most value possible. And
Right.
if you can give things like that to try to help people to have some security and to be able to participate in the upside,
Right.
because they have reasonable basis to be concerned about maybe a 1-year miss or whatever, right?
Right. The other angle I would add to this, or another way of negotiating a deal like this, is let's say the company has 1,000 clients, and one of the things you really want to be careful of is when a business is bought and it transitions into new ownership. Well, some of those clients might be like, well, I like the previous owner, I'm done working here, or something like that.
Yes.
And so you can actually also incentivize based off of maintaining and holding on to clients through that transition for 2 years, whatever, something like that.
That's a really great point. And I think for service-based businesses, that's particularly important.
Yeah.
I tend to focus on businesses that are manufacturing and
Mhm.
businesses that are oriented around direct-to-consumer sales. So
Mhm.
if it does either of those things, I'm really, really comfortable with it. I've dealt with businesses that are service-oriented. I'm an owner and partner in businesses that are service-oriented, but those have all been things I've either started or I've bought in as a partner with somebody else who's staying in. And
Yeah.
and that's because I find service-based businesses require the most management. And
Right.
if you're a people person, if you're gifted in a priestly way where you love relationship and all that, and you want to pour time in and you want to manage people and focus on building the culture and all that, service-based businesses can be a really great place for a person with that gifting to go in and generate a
Yeah.
lot of value. And especially because you can use that same gifting set to build relationship with the clients. And
Mhm.
so people who are really focused on interacting with the team really like to do that kind of stuff. That can be good there. And I like that. The problem is just with the family and with the pastorate and stuff like that, I have to
Yeah.
focus on a more efficient model for engaging with people. But especially early on,
Mhm.
service-based businesses, you can buy them at lower multiples. And if you have time and you're gifted in that way, you can generate a ton of value.
Right. Right. So let's talk about like the bank financing side of this. So I mean, I don't make I don't make any money. I can pay my bills. I
If
have a
you
little
work
bit, I
real
have a
hard,
little bit of debt. Pardon me?
you work real hard. That can't be true. You must just be trying to constantly reinvest it. You're just plowing everything back in. That's what's really going on here. You're just
Yeah.
constantly trying to work to bless other people and plow it back in. But okay,
Yeah. Thank you, David. And I got a little bit of debt. So how could a guy like me buy a business and the bank loan me money to help me buy that business?
yeah. So I think So what you're doing, there's two things. One, if you're trying to put a personal guarantee on it, right? So you're like, if for a guy like you, right, you are a business owner, you have multiple businesses, and you're constantly like you're trying. Your goal is one to reduce taxes, right? So you're trying to expense stuff and grow the business and have it generate other future stuff. So it becomes as you do that, right? As a guy like you're going, how do I make that happen? The only way you can get a bank to be comfortable with your personal guarantee is if you make it so you pay tons of taxes, right? And so if you're somebody who's a wage earner, or you've got businesses that are small businesses where you're trying to avoid taxable income by lawfully using the tax code, then what you're doing is you're going to make it hard for your personal guarantee to be worth anything. So the only thing you can do to make it so that people want to lend you money is find businesses that have two key things. One, lendable assets. So like equipment, inventory, pieces of real estate, right?
So where you are basically putting those business assets as backing for the loan?
Exactly. So those become security to the lender, where if you don't pay it back, they can take that stuff and they can resell it, right? So again, equipment, inventory, accounts receivable, real estate. If there's a valuable patent or other, trademark where there's a receiving of cash that's coming in, those are all examples of lendable assets that are able to be used as security. The other thing is to be able to demonstrate durable cash flow. Okay, so durable cash flow is the other thing. So lenders are going to call a loan that's not backed by an asset, they're going to call that an airball. They're going to say essentially this is all hopes and dreams, right? This is stories about money, right? And so we're going to believe you that you can do that. So every bank is going to tell you, well, we can't really do that. And they all can.
Yeah.
And all that is necessary for them to lend you money on the basis of future cash flow is one, for them to believe that the business is able to do it, and two, for them to believe that you are able to do it. And bankers like to pretend like there's this like grand bureaucracy and like there's like a number, like there's like somebody back there rolling dice, right? And they're like, oh, we can lend to you today. Oh, we can't lend to you today. And that's not the case. All there is some decision makers somewhere that like to have a set of rules that they can use as a justification to say no, because their job is to say no most of the time, and they want to make you not hate their brand and not hate their people. So it's like, oh, we wish we could lend you money, but we can't because of the things that are impersonal and not us. It's totally not our choice. And so that's their goal, is to make it as impersonal as possible. And then when they give it to you, they want to make it as personal as possible, because it's like, we gave this to you.
Right.
We love you.
So are you basically saying like having a good relationship with a bank is probably your best bet?
Yes, having a good relationship with a bank and local banks that are smaller. If you're buying smaller businesses and you're doing deals that are below $5 million, a local bank is probably the best way for you to do it. So an SBA lender or a local bank are going to be kind of the people you're looking for deals there. SBA lenders are going to take a personal guarantee no matter what.
Yeah.
If you're doing banks and they're doing non-SBA loans, then they might not require a personal guarantee.
Okay.
And so the personal guarantee means they can go after, any of your personal property, any of the assets you've built, all of your life savings, whatever.
Yeah.
One other thing I really want to make sure that your audience hears: starting a business is awesome, but it's really hard to get traction. And so, maybe we talk about this another time, but there's a philosophy called a lean startup that has this sort of the idea that your goal is to do the minimum possible to test the market. Your goal is to figure out, how quickly can I get somebody to tell me whether they'll pay me money for this or not. The reason for that is because traction is hard to get. It's hard to get customers. Once you've got a business that already has customers, they have traction. And when you're buying the business, you're essentially buying the ongoing flow, the exchange of resources, and you're taking control of those cash flows. And there's a durability to it because people are creatures of habit. They like to keep doing business with where they've been doing business. They like to do things that work as long as they keep working, all that kind of stuff. So if you can buy a business, what you're doing is you're escaping the most difficult part, which is getting the traction, and you're able to accelerate the process, and you already have some sort of staff and infrastructure in place. So you have built things from the ground up. So you understand the difficulty of that. And now, having already done that, you're like, how can I avoid that and just accelerate the process for the future, right? So that's one thing I want to make sure your people understood is that idea of the value of avoiding having to get traction.
Right. And most businesses fell within the first 3 years. And so one of the other values of buying a business is let's say you buy the business after 3 years. Well, you're buying all that past capital that the mom and pop put into their own business and that you don't have to do. So maybe the business is still making, you know, bringing in $500,000 a year or whatever the numbers are. But they've got through probably almost one of the hardest parts of the business. There's still a lot of hard parts coming ahead. You know, that 3 to 7 years is the next cycle of a business and everything. And so, but when you buy a business, you're buying like this past intangible, you know, capital base or equity or whatever you want to, however you want to describe it. That uh, you know, you don't have to set up the infrastructure. You don't have to. Now, you probably bring infrastructure to the cell, and you're probably going to, you know, smooth out the infrastructure after the cell, whatever. But
Yes.
you know, the point of sale machines, the, you know, all the infrastructure that it takes to run a business, you don't have to. You're buying the history of what has already occurred there.
Yes, that's exactly right. No, that's exactly right, and that's a fantastic point, and everybody should take note of that.
Yeah.
You are saving yourself time, right? And
Mhm.
money's hard to get, but so is time, right? And
Yeah.
in fact, you can't get it back, right? So if you're able to save yourself the years of the hassle and difficulty, the fact that you can buy avoidance of that is so valuable. The stress, the time, and the fact that you're getting control of all those assets, you're buying it with it. And so you're kind of buying that as a discount.
Mhm.
And that's one of the neat things about this, and especially if you can use other people's money. So the three parts there with that whole, you got equity in, you got to borrow somebody else's money, and you can do a seller note. You can use all that stuff to leverage. And if you've got basic skills to be able to run a business, you know, one of those five, one or more of those five basic areas of business, and you can bring that in, you're able to leverage all the effort that other people have had. You're going to accelerate your learning curve on the other things you don't already know, and you can hire people to help you with the weak points that you don't know very well. And so you can skip all of that frustration of the getting traction phase.
Right. What so last line of thought here. How do you handle, so again, you know, basic guy like me, I got to have a good relationship with a bank, but on the legal side, could I walk through a process and close a business without a lawyer, or do you recommend getting a lawyer? Like, how do you do kind of the, like, all the legal processing of buying a business?
So telling people to not get lawyers is kind of like telling people to not see a doctor.
Yeah.
So I'm highly incentivized to not explain that right now. But let me say this.
Okay.
If your lawyer is just reviewing the deal and helping you to avoid disastrous wording, and you write like a basic draft, if you have a lawyer that's willing to do that, that's really good.
Yeah.
If you have a lawyer that demands that they write everything from scratch and they want to make sure that you have, I literally wear a belt and suspenders. Okay. But in the lending world, the joke is, if you want a lawyer that makes it so all the risk is put on one side, they're asking for a belt and suspenders, which most people view as redundant. I think it's comfortable. Anyways, so besides that, the idea is they're saying they're trying to put all the risk on one side. And so most lawyers want to do that. And so if you have a lawyer write all the stuff, you need to be aware of this. Lawyers kill deals. And they also protect you from bad deals.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want a lawyer to protect you from bad deals, but you also want a lawyer that's going to help you to close deals that you need. You drive the lawyer. You're the one that tells the lawyer what to do. And so if you can get a lawyer that's willing to give you some basic advice and help you avoid a bad deal and do some basic legal due diligence on stuff, and they're willing to do that for $10,000 or $20,000, great. If there's somebody who wants to do everything and it's going to cost you $100,000 or $150,000, that's the kind of thing you need for a $10 million deal. That's something you need for 20, 30, 40, $50 million deals. You need somebody to give you some basic advice for $10,000 on a deal that's like, you know, $1 million deal or something like that, or a $2 million deal. But that's the thing, is you need to talk to, you want a lawyer who is not trying to kill the deal or not trying to find, you know, everything they could possibly tell you to cover their own butts, right? You need them to talk to you about really big risks.
Right. That's really helpful. Any closing advice in going through and buying a business?
So my basic advice would be, you're looking at this, and what the lender wants, they want assets and they want durable cash flow, right? And they want you to look like a credible buyer. So you need to know how to project that to make a deal happen. But you need to sit down and look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, do I actually believe that I am capable of doing this? Do I actually think that this is a durable cash flow business? Do I think these assets are any good? Right. And if you don't believe those things, do not break the 9th commandment by telling a lender that they do.
Hmm.
And so at the same time, if you don't believe those things, you need to figure out why. And
Right.
if it's just the deal, if it's like you think this business is a bad business, then save yourself the grief and don't buy it.
Yeah, right.
But if the thing is you feel like you don't have the discipline to do it, you need to figure out how to make it so that you have more responsibility.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not married, get married. If you don't have kids, have kids.
Yeah.
Make sure you're showing up to work, doing work well. And if you're not in a management position, you don't have significant responsibility, figure out how to take on responsibility and to get yourself under some stress where you can be pushed to take on additional work and where there's consequences if you fail. And so you need to lever up the sense of responsibility that's on you. You need to carry load so that you can have some confidence that you're able to do that. And I'm not saying you trust in yourself, trust in God, but look at how far God has progressed you already in terms of your competency and character. And if you do not have competency and character, get it. And then once you've got it, go take bold risks,
Right.
for the glory of God, and to advance your own station and your own household.
Don't miss our Twitter spaces that just happened on Friday. Me and David are going to be talking about, maybe businesses to buy. What kind of businesses should you be looking at? What are good opportunities out there? And we're going to kind of talk through a number of ideas there. So don't miss Twitter spaces live. That just happened last Friday. And of course, that'll be dropping in our app and the podcast also. So thank you so much, David, for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate this conversation. I think there's a lot here, a lot more to chase down, but thank you for coming on.
Thanks for the honor of having me. Lord bless you.
Download our app. Go into the App Store, type in Fight Laugh Feast or Cross Politic or even Pub TV, and download the app. That's the best place to really catch us as we constantly get censored on YouTube and so forth. So download the app. Thank you for joining us. I'm really enjoying these business podcasts, getting to sit down with CEOs from all over. It's been a lot of fun. Again, we are ordinary Christians striving for extraordinary results, and may God bless that. Thank you for joining Business Makers Podcast. We'll see you next week.